The training hall stretched across 300 meters of reinforced titanium plating, and today it was going to become a graveyard for someone's pride. Vorketh stood at the central command podium, his 4 arms crossed in what every species in the Galactic Military Academy recognized as the universal posture of someone who absolutely did not have time for incompetence. His exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh, fluorescent lighting, each segment polished to mirror brightness, because if you were going to crush dreams, you might as well look good doing it. 47 cadets from 19 different species stood in formation before him, each one supposedly the best their planet had to offer, each one about to learn that their best was probably not good enough. The gravity chamber hummed with dormant power, waiting for Vorketh's command to transform this room into a nightmare, and he was more than ready to oblige. "Welcome to Advanced Combat Conditioning," Vorketh announced, his translator converting his clicking mandibles into something approximating standard galactic. "This course has a 63% failure rate. Most of you will not complete today's session. Some of you will require medical intervention. All of you will question your life choices." He paused for effect, letting his words sink into their various brain cases, thoraxes, and whatever the Yendari kept their anxiety in. "Today we test your ability to function under gravitational stress. Your enemies will not fight you on neutral ground. They will choose advantages. They will create hellscapes. They will make you wish you had chosen a different career, perhaps something in accounting." A few nervous chitters rippled through the formation, which was exactly what Vorketh wanted. Fear was a tool. Fear kept soldiers alive, or at the very least, kept them from doing something monumentally stupid. The door at the far end of the hall hissed open precisely 12 minutes after the scheduled start time, and a human wandered in. Not marched, not jogged apologetically, wandered, like he was touring a museum or perhaps looking for a bathroom. Vorketh's primary eyes narrowed while his secondary eyes tracked the latecomer's approach, cataloging everything wrong with this picture. The human was average height for his species, maybe 70 standard units with dark hair that clearly had not met a regulation comb in several days. He wore the academy training uniform like it was weekend sleepwear, loose and untucked, and he was carrying what appeared to be a beverage container, steam rising from its lid. This was Marcus, according to the roster Vorketh had memorized, and Marcus apparently thought punctuality was optional. "Cadet," Vorketh's voice cut across the hall like a plasma blade through butter. "You are late." Marcus looked up, seemingly surprised to find himself the center of attention, and took a slow sip from his container before responding. "Yeah, sorry about that," he said, his tone suggesting he was perhaps 5% sorry at absolute maximum. "The food court took forever. Apparently the Zentari breakfast rush is no joke. Who knew? Also, your coffee here is terrible, like genuinely upsetting. I had to add 6 sugars just to make it vaguely drinkable." Several cadets made choking sounds. Telrina, a Crescian whose species had evolved from hive insects and understood hierarchy in their genetic code, looked like she might faint from secondhand embarrassment. Barak, a Thornian heavy worlder covered in protective scales, actually took a step away from Marcus as if incompetence might be contagious. Vorketh's mandibles twitched, a sign that he was cycling through several creative punishment options in his head. "You understand that this course begins at 0700 hours, precisely, not whenever you finish critiquing our beverages." Marcus nodded agreeably, finding a spot at the end of the formation and setting his cup down on the floor. "Totally get it, but in my defense, nobody actually sent me the schedule. I kind of just assumed we started at a reasonable time. You know, like 8, maybe 8:30. Who schedules physical training before breakfast? That is just asking for performance issues. Vorketh decided in that moment that this human would serve as an excellent example, not just an example, the example. The cautionary tale that cadets would whisper about in the barracks for years to come. Gravity to 2 times standard, Vorketh commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The chamber responded instantly, invisible forces pressing down on every body in the room. 2 Gs was the traditional starting point, enough to stress most species without causing immediate injury, a pressure that separated the merely competent from the truly elite. Telrina dropped to one knee immediately, her chitinous frame designed for agility, not endurance. Barak spread his stance wider, muscles bulging as he fought to remain upright. Drent, an amphibious Quellan whose homeworld featured gravity at 0.7 standard, made a sound like someone had dropped a boulder on his chest, because functionally, someone had. Across the formation, cadets struggled, adapted, endured, and Marcus rolled his shoulders, tilted his head left and right until something popped audibly and said, "Oh, is this thing on? I thought we were still in the waiting phase." Vorketh stared. His instructor training had covered many scenarios. Defiance he knew how to handle, fear he could work with, even arrogance had its place in the pedagogical toolkit. But this casual dismissal of forces that were currently making a heavy worlder sweat? "You feel the increased gravity, human?" Vorketh asked, his tone dangerous. Marcus did a few experimental squats, bouncing slightly at the bottom of each one. "I mean, sure, it is kind of nice, actually, like a weighted blanket, but everywhere. Very soothing. So when does the actual warm-up start?" Telrina made a sound like a kettle whistling. Barak's eyes went wide enough to show the nictitating membranes he usually kept hidden. Sula, a fellow instructor observing from the control booth, leaned forward with sudden interest because this was either going to be spectacular or spectacularly stupid, and either way, it was worth watching. "Gravity to 3 times standard," Vorketh snapped, abandoning his carefully planned escalation schedule. The chamber groaned as the increased load hit, forces multiplying across every molecule in the room. Telrina collapsed entirely, her legs simply unable to support her increased weight. Barak went down to one knee, using his arms to prevent complete collapse. Drent was making sounds that his species probably used to signal distress to predators, hoping they would just kill him quickly and end the suffering. Around the room, cadets were learning important lessons about their own limitations, which was exactly what this training was designed to teach, except nobody was supposed to learn it in the first 30 seconds. Yenna, the medical officer, was already moving toward Telrina, scanner in hand, preparing for what was clearly going to be a busy day. Marcus dropped into a push-up position. Not a modified push-up, not a struggling attempt to stay off the ground. A textbook perfect push-up, arms at 90 degrees, back straight, and he started counting out loud. 1, 2, 3. "Hey, Vorketh, you guys got any protein bars or anything? I am probably going to need a snack after this. 4, 5, 6. He paused at the bottom of the 7th push-up, looking over at Barak, who was trembling with effort just to remain on one knee. "You all right there, buddy? Your breathing sounds rough. Try inhaling through your nose. Exhaling through your mouth. Helps with the pressure differential. 7, 8, 9. Barak made a sound that was probably meant to be gratitude, but came out more like existential despair. Vorketh's mandibles were clicking so fast they were practically vibrating, and Sula was now actively recording this, because when she told people about this later, they were absolutely not going to believe her, without evidence. The human, Marcus, was doing push-ups under 3 times standard gravity, offering fitness advice to aliens who were currently questioning every decision that had led them to this moment and asking about snacks, not struggling, not suffering, snacking. 10, 11, 12, Marcus continued, utterly unbothered, while Vorketh's carefully constructed reputation as the Academy's hardest instructor began developing cracks. Grimlock, the Academy commander, appeared in the observation booth next to Sulla, his massive frame filling the doorway, drawn by reports of something unusual happening in Chamber 7. He took one look at the scene below, at the struggling aliens and the impossibly casual human, and his expression shifted into something between fascination and concern. "Gravity to 4 times standard," Vorketh announced, and there was no pedagogy in his voice anymore. Just pure, stubborn refusal to be shown up by a latecomer with terrible taste in beverages. "Now, we will see your limits, human." Marcus finished his 20th push-up, stood up, and grinned. "Sure thing, boss. Just let me know when we are actually getting started with the real stuff." The gravity chamber's warning lights flickered from yellow to orange as the environmental systems struggled to compensate for forces they were never designed to sustain continuously. 4 times standard gravity was beyond the recommended safety threshold for most species, a pressure that turned simple breathing into an athletic event, and Vorketh had just activated it out of spite, which was possibly not his finest moment as an educator. The remaining cadets who had not already been evacuated were now essentially decorative floor coverings, unable to move, barely able to think, their bodies pinned by invisible weight. Telrina had been carried out on an anti-gravity stretcher 10 minutes ago, her chitinous frame creaking ominously under stress it had never evolved to handle. Barak was still technically conscious, but only in the sense that his eyes were open, his entire muscular system locked in a desperate battle against gravitational forces that gave absolutely zero consideration to his feelings. Drent had passed out, which was probably a mercy, and Yenna was now running between casualties with the frantic energy of someone whose shift had gone sideways in ways medical school had not prepared her for. Marcus was doing lunges, not struggling through lunges, not attempting lunges, actually doing them with proper form, alternating legs, and providing commentary. "You know, this really targets the glutes," he said, addressing nobody in particular, since everyone else was too busy surviving to care about muscle group optimization. "Back on Earth, we used to do these with weighted vests, but honestly, this is way more convenient. No equipment necessary." He completed another lunge, his knee touching the floor gently before pushing back up. "Hey, Vorketh, you doing okay up there? You look a little stressed. Maybe you should try some lunges. Great for stress relief." Vorketh's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely, which the other instructors recognized as a very bad sign, like when a volcano stops rumbling right before it explodes. Sulla had abandoned all pretense of professional detachment and was now openly recording everything, her 3-fingered hands steady on the camera controls. "I have been teaching here for 14 cycles," she murmured to Grimlock, who stood beside her with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "I have seen Thorakian berserkers, Zentari combat specialists, even a Quellan who could hold 3 Gs for almost 2 minutes. Never, never have I seen anything like this." Grimlock's eyes, all 6 of them, tracked Marcus as the human transitioned from lunges into what appeared to be jumping jacks, his feet leaving the ground despite the quadruple gravity, physics itself seeming personally offended. "What is his homeworld classification?" Grimlock asked quietly. Sulla checked her datapad, scrolling through Marcus's file, and her skin went pale, which was impressive considering her species was already fairly translucent. Category 4, Deathworld. High gravity, extreme weather variations, abundant megafauna, toxic atmosphere in certain regions, and apparently they evolved as persistence hunters, which explains absolutely everything and also nothing. The other instructors had gathered now, drawn by rumors spreading through the academy faster than quantum communication, and they lined the observation windows like spectators at the galaxy's strangest sporting event. Credits were changing hands as bets were placed, odds constantly recalculating as Marcus continued to treat lethal gravitational forces like a moderately interesting aerobics class. 5 times standard, Vorketh announced, his voice tight, and the chamber itself seemed to protest, metal groaning, support struts flexing. This was Academy record territory now, gravitational loads that existed purely in theoretical training scenarios. And Vorketh had officially left responsible instruction behind and entered the realm of personal vendetta. Marcus paused mid-jumping jack, and for the first time his expression shifted slightly, a small crease appearing between his eyebrows. The gathered instructors leaned forward collectively, sensing blood in the water. "Okay," Marcus said, breathing slightly heavier now, and Vorketh felt a surge of vindication that yes, finally the human had limits. "Okay, this is actually pretty good." The vindication died screaming. Marcus dropped into a plank position, holding his body rigid, and started a timer on his wrist unit. "Going to see if I can beat my personal record. 2 minutes, 37 seconds. Do not distract me. I need to focus." Vorketh's translator implant made a sound it had never made before, possibly trying to communicate that the concepts it was being asked to translate had exceeded its operational parameters. Around the observation deck, instructors were making gestures specific to their species, prayers, protective wards, expressions of disbelief that transcended language. Grimlock stepped closer to the window, his massive hands pressed against the reinforced glass. "What is their training like?" he asked, not really expecting an answer, but Sulla was already pulling up Earth military records, her eyes widening as she read. According to their files, human soldiers regularly train under additional weight loads. They run excessive distances for no apparent tactical reason. They have something called boot camp that seems designed to break them psychologically before rebuilding them. And, oh, this is interesting. She turned the datapad toward Grimlock. Their gravity is actually 1.3 standard. They have been living their entire lives under higher gravity than our 2G starting test. The observation deck went very quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when an entire room of people simultaneously realizes they have made a terrible miscalculation. Marcus held his plank for 2 minutes and 43 seconds, beating his personal record, and when he stood up, he actually looked pleased. "New record, nice." "Hey, Vorketh, you got like a towel or something. I am starting to work up a sweat here. Also, seriously, when does the actual combat training start? Is that next, or are we doing cardio first? I am good either way, just want to know what to expect." 6 times standard gravity was not a training load. It was a weapon, the kind of force you use to crush ore in industrial mining operations, to test structural integrity of spacecraft hulls, to make absolutely certain that biological matter understood its place in the universe, was flat against the floor. The chamber's warning systems had progressed beyond orange into a pulsing red that painted everything in hellish light, and somewhere deep in the facility's infrastructure, automated safety protocols were having heated arguments with Vorketh's override commands. The medical bay was officially full, Yenna and her staff working overtime to treat compressed spines, strained organs, and the psychological trauma of cadets who had just learned that their elite status meant nothing to physics. Every alien had been evacuated except for Vorketh himself, who remained at the control podium, and even he was feeling the effects now, his exoskeleton creaking ominously as forces pressed down on joints that had never been designed for this kind of abuse. Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, apparently meditating, his breathing steady and controlled. He had removed his uniform top at the 5.5 G mark, not because he was struggling, but because he claimed it was getting stuffy, and now he sat there in his undershirt, looking like someone waiting for a delayed transport rather than someone experiencing gravitational forces sufficient to liquefy most organic species. "You know what this reminds me of?" Marcus said conversationally, and Vorketh realized with growing horror that the human was about to tell him a story. "Back home, we had this thing called high-altitude training. You go up into mountains where the air is thinner, makes your body adapt, builds up your red blood cell count. First time I did it, I thought I was going to die. Could not breathe, could not think. Everything hurt." He shifted slightly, adjusting his posture. "But you adapt, right? That is the thing about humans. We are really, really good at adapting to stuff that should kill us." Sula was no longer just recording. She was compiling a full report, complete with biological analysis, force measurements, and what was rapidly becoming a dissertation on human physiological resilience. "Commander," she said to Grimlock, her voice carrying a mix of awe and concern, "I am reading his vital signs through the chamber sensors. His heart rate is elevated, yes, but only to what would be normal exercise levels. His oxygen saturation is holding steady at 96%. He is not struggling. He is just existing in there like it is completely normal." Grimlock watched Marcus with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle that kept adding new pieces. Pull up Earth's environmental data again. Everything. Gravity, atmospheric composition, predator classifications, geological activity, all of it. The datapad displayed information that made several instructors physically recoil. Earth had gravity at 1.3 standard, yes, but that was just the beginning. The planet experienced regular seismic events that could level cities, weather patterns that included rotating columns of destructive wind called tornadoes, electrical storms with enough power to fry starship systems, temperature variations that swung from flesh freezing to lethally hot depending on location and season. The predator list was genuinely disturbing. Creatures that ranged from microscopic parasites to multi-ton ambush hunters, and humans had not only survived in this environment, but had somehow become the dominant species. "They evolved as hunters," Sulla read aloud, her voice faint. "Pursuit predators. They would chase prey animals for hours, sometimes days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Their skeletal structure is reinforced. Their muscle fiber density is approximately 40% higher than average for bipedal species their size, and their pain tolerance is, and I am quoting here, abnormally high due to evolutionary pressures favoring those who could continue functioning despite injury." Vorketh heard all of this from his position in the chamber, his translator still functioning despite his mounting physical distress, and something shifted in his understanding. This was not defiance. This was not even exceptional talent. This was just a human being existing within parameters his species considered normal, and the revelation was somehow worse than if Marcus had been actively trying to show him up. 7 times standard gravity, Vorketh announced, and his voice cracked slightly, pride and stubbornness warring with the small voice in his head that sounded suspiciously like common sense and was strongly suggesting he stop this immediately. The chamber responded, and now even Marcus made a sound, a small grunt of effort as the increased load hit. His meditation posture shifted, becoming more braced, his hands pressing against his knees. "Okay, now this is actually challenging," Marcus said, and Vorketh felt a flicker of satisfaction that, yes, 7 Gs was finally enough. "This is more like it. You should have started here, would have saved us all some time." The satisfaction died as it had lived, quickly and pointlessly. Marcus started talking again, his words coming slower now, but still steady. My instructor back in basic training, guy named Hendrix, absolute maniac. He used to make us do hill sprints in full gear, 40 kilograms of equipment straight uphill, and if you stopped, you started over. I threw up the first time, actually threw up, but the second time I only dry heaved. Third time, I made it all the way up. Fourth time, I was helping carry the guys who could not make it. He paused, breathing deliberately. Point is, you push, you adapt, you get stronger. That is how it works. That is how we work. Around the observation deck, the other instructors were engaged in rapid conversations, recalculating every assumption they had made about human limitations. We are going to need to completely redesign their training protocols, one instructor muttered. Standard conditioning will not work. It might actually bore them. Another added, we need to contact Earth Command, find out what they use for training baselines. If this is normal for them, we are operating with fundamentally incorrect data. Grimlock remained silent, watching, analyzing, and coming to conclusions that were going to require significant policy changes. The chamber's structural integrity warnings reached critical levels, automated systems overriding instructor controls, and the gravity began ramping down an emergency shutdown sequence. 8 times standard had been achieved for exactly 4.3 seconds before the safety protocols had finally won their argument with Vorketh's commands. Marcus stood up as the gravity returned to normal, stretched, and asked the question that would echo through academy halls for years. So what is next? Cardio? The medical bay had transformed into something resembling a disaster relief center, beds filled with cadets in various states of recovery, and Yenna moved between them with the practiced efficiency of someone who had just lived through the strangest shift of her career. Marcus walked through the rows, offering encouragement, his presence somehow comforting despite being the indirect cause of everyone's current condition. "Hey, Telrina, you did great out there," he said, stopping beside the Crescian's bed, where she lay with cooling packs on her compressed joints. "Seriously, 1 knee at 2 Gs is impressive. Your species was not built for that kind of pressure, and you still held on." Telrina's antennae twitched weakly. "You were doing push-ups," she managed, her voice box still recovering. Marcus grinned. "Yeah, but I cheat. Grew up in high gravity, so this is all kind of normal for me. You are working against your own biology, which is way harder." Barack watched this interaction from his own bed, his scaled body still aching, and something resembling respect flickered in his eyes. The human had not just endured what should have been impossible. He had done it with humor and kindness, never making the struggling aliens feel inferior. That took a different kind of strength, one Barack was only beginning to understand. Vorketh entered the medical bay, moving stiffly, his exoskeleton showing stress fractures that would require professional repair. He approached Marcus, and the room went quiet, everyone waiting to see how this confrontation would resolve. "Human," Vorketh said, his translator carrying tones his species used for formal acknowledgement. "I underestimated you. That was instructive." Marcus looked up, surprised. "Hey, no hard feelings. You were just doing your job. Plus, that was actually a pretty decent workout once we got past 5 Gs. The door opened again, and 2 more humans entered, Gennaro and Kiva, both wearing academy uniforms and looking around with bright curiosity. "Are we late?" Kiva asked, her voice cheerful. "The orientation packet was kind of confusing." Gennaro spotted Marcus and waved. "Hey, Marcus, they told us you already started training. How was it?" Marcus shrugged casually. "Pretty light. Just some gravity tolerance stuff. I think they are still calibrating for human baselines." Vorketh made a sound like grinding metal, which his species used to express profound existential fatigue. Sulla, who had followed the new humans in, was already scanning them with her datapad, confirming what she suspected. Normal human vital signs, normal human physiology, which meant normal human capacity for absolutely unreasonable feats of endurance. Grimlock appeared in the doorway, his massive frame commanding immediate attention. "Vorketh, we need new protocols, immediately. The humans cannot train with standard cadets. The risk assessment is completely wrong." He turned to Marcus, Gennaro, and Kiva. "Your species requires specialized instruction. We will need to contact Earth Command for guidance on appropriate conditioning methods." Kiva raised her hand like she was in a classroom. "Question: does appropriate mean harder? Because Marcus mentioned you guys have variable gravity chambers, and honestly, that sounds amazing. We have to use weighted vests back home, which is just annoying because they chafe." The instructors exchanged glances that communicated several paragraphs worth of concern. Weeks passed and the academy adapted. A new human-specific training wing was constructed, with reinforced equipment, higher gravity tolerances, and warning labels in multiple languages. Marcus became the unofficial liaison, helping translate human capabilities into terms other species could understand, and more importantly, helping aliens understand that humans were not trying to show off. They were just built differently. Vorketh, humbled but not broken, requested assignment to the Human Training Division, determined to learn from the species that had shattered his assumptions. Their relationship evolved into something resembling mutual respect, the instructor finally understanding that strength came in many forms. One evening, Marcus sat with Vorketh in the observation deck, watching new human recruits casually handle 5G conditioning. "So, confession time," Marcus said, sipping terrible academy coffee that he had learned to tolerate. "Earth's gravity is actually closer to 1.5 standard in some regions. The place I grew up, 1.6. So technically all this stuff was actually lighter than what I am used to." Vorketh's mandibles stopped moving entirely, his translator silent, his mind processing this new information. Marcus grinned. "Still want to teach us cardio?" The Galactic Military Academy never quite recovered from the human integration, though recovered was perhaps the wrong word. Evolved fit better. Within 6 months, 3 additional training facilities had been constructed specifically for human cadets, each one equipped with gravity systems that could safely reach 12 times standard, environmental chambers that simulated Earth's frankly terrifying weather patterns, and endurance courses that made veteran instructors question their career choices. Marcus had been promoted to Senior Cadet Liaison, a position created entirely because someone needed to explain to increasingly concerned alien administrators that no, humans were not secretly cybernetic organisms. They just came from a planet that really wanted them dead, and they had responded by becoming aggressively difficult to kill. Vorketh had found unexpected fulfillment in his new role, teaching human combat conditioning with the same intensity he had once brought to breaking alien recruits, except now his students actually enjoyed the suffering and frequently asked for more. He had learned humility, perspective, and a healthy respect for species that treated danger as a personal challenge rather than a sensible warning. His relationship with Marcus had grown into genuine friendship, the kind forged through shared suffering and mutual respect, though Marcus still made fun of his coffee preferences, and Vorketh still occasionally tried to design workouts that would finally make the human complain. The other species had adapted too, learning to appreciate human tenacity, their unreasonable optimism, and their bizarre habit of turning everything into competition, including recovery time from injuries. Telrina had recovered fully and now trained alongside humans when she wanted to push her limits, though she wisely stopped at 3Gs. Barak had requested cross-training with human units, determined to understand their methods. The academy had become something new, something better, a place where differences were celebrated rather than merely tolerated. And somewhere in the training halls, gravity set to maximum, humans laughed and asked if this was just the warm-up, while the rest of the galaxy watched and wondered what else Earth had been hiding.